Good evening. Welcome back to the Darkness on the Edge of Town Paranormal Radio Show. I'm your host, Dave Schrader. Sitting across the board from me, Tim Dennis, intern Robin, and Andy.
And Andy.
We need a title for Andy.
Andy.
Darkness Andy?
Admiral Andy.
Admiral Andy,
like
the Darkness Pirate.
The Darkness Pirate.
I don't know. I got nothing. We got an interesting show, though, tonight. As we're getting closer to Halloween, I like to spook it up a little.
Hey.
And this evening, we are going to talk about creepy possession.
Ooh.
So this is nothing to joke around about. But tomorrow night, our good friends at Paranormal State have a 1-hour episode airing on A&E. Check it out. I believe it's 9 o'clock Central Time, 10 p.m. Eastern Time. You can check your local listings for times and channel listings as well. And we're going to delve into, they're going to actually show a possession case on film. And with us from the television show and part of the production team there, we have got with us Chris Bozak, and he's a field producer for this episode. And he's joining us. He's going to kind of walk us through the path it took to get this episode on the air and what all went into it from the interviewing all the way through filming. So let's welcome Chris Bozak. Thank you for joining us here, Chris. Chris, are you there?
I'm with you. Can you hear me?
Yep, there you go. We got you up online now. Thank you.
Dave.
Thanks for spending some time with us this evening. We appreciate you being here.
It's my pleasure, Dave. Thanks for having me on.
Now, you guys on Paranormal State, you guys have done quite a bit of delving into families and helping them out with issues. How did this case come to your attention?
Kind of in a roundabout way, which is part of a challenge to putting it all together. We actually, Ryan and PRS got I think either a phone call or an email from a group that was formerly Kentucky Paranormal. A couple of really good guys named Chris and Joe, who had been in touch with this family for a few weeks and had actually spent a couple days at their house. And long story short, throughout those days, they kind of got a grasp of what was going on and kind of, I think, just realized that they needed some more help and wanted to call in some reinforcements. And they called, they got in touch with PRS, and that kind of brought us along with it.
Now, your position with the show, you're a field producer, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And explain that to our listeners that aren't familiar with the process. What is a field producer, and what was your job to put this together?
Well, they kind of differ from show to show, but for Paranormal State, the field producer, we're primarily responsible for, generally, we'll make first contact with the family. We'll be the first ones to meet them in person. More often than not, the people that are involved with the television show are reaching out to PRS or production so they know that there's a television show involved with it. In this instance, it was a little bit different because, obviously this family, they didn't reach out to us initially, so, we kind of had to convince them, for lack of a better word, to allow us to document PRS's investigation and the things that subsequently came of it. Generally, the field producer, makes point of first contact, organizes everything out in the location. Production will follow up, and that's when PRS will show up and start to do what they do. The field producer just basically kind of sets the plate as best they can, so the shoot goes as smoothly as possible.
Now, Dave Miller had told us, and he's a friend of ours, of course, on the show, and
sure.
is one of the big shots with Paranormal State. He was
Absolutely.
saying that you had been brought in with the family, and that the family just really took to you, and it made it a lot easier. What was their reluctance factor in doing this and airing their story?
That's awful kind of Dave to say, but their reluctance was completely understandable. I mean, first and foremost, it's you're opening your lives and your home to a crew of people and really the world by allowing people to tape your everything that's going on in your home. So in any instance, that's something that people have to consider, but usually it's something that they consider beforehand. I happened to show up there and had to tell him that we can help, but unfortunately my help and PRS's help at that moment in time came with the television production. It was just what it was. We were on a tight schedule, and if we were going to help them, we had to shoot it. But the father was just a great guy. I asked him to give me 15 minutes, and I wound up speaking to them for about 2.5 hours, and just listened. And I didn't do anything special. I just told him that we'll do everything we can to help, and we do. And it's something that I prided myself in with that crew of people in PRS is that everybody from the top on down, from Dave, executive producers, the entire production crew, everybody shows up with the client's best interest at hand at the end of the day. The television show kind of miraculously comes out almost as a byproduct of everybody's efforts. So it's just always a nice thing to go in and meet people and really tell them that, look, trust me because I know that good things are coming if we can make this happen. Lucky enough for everybody that they kind of put forth the faith and took the leap of faith and they invited us in.
Now, let me ask you, when you go in there to check this out and you're kind of the first contact, I mean, did you walk in? Was there, the bed shaking, the kid's head spinning in circles, green pea soup all over the floor? How did you, as the field producer, look at this and say, yeah, this is a viable case. This is something we should look into. Was there something that stood out of this that made you believe that this kid might really be possessed?
Well, I've worked with Dave and everybody at Paranormal State for the better part of about 10 months. I've been in some pretty interesting situations in some homes, and I think my thermometer, for lack of a better word, has kind of sharpened to something. And I got there, got to their house, and the moment I stepped foot in the house, I could just tell that there was something not right. It was just very heavy and very sad and very. It was just a very somber atmosphere. I talked with Laura's parents for, like I said, about 2.5 hours, and Laura wasn't feeling well at the time, so I didn't even meet her face to face. She was upstairs in the bedroom, and they just kind of told me the whole story. I had them fill me in from start to finish, and they asked me 1,000 questions, and I answered as much as I could, and just really try to wrap my head around what was at stake and what was going on and how serious things were. And after 2.5 hours, I called New York, and we had a little quick meeting on the phone, and I just pretty much straight up told the people I was working with and for that we had to get everybody there as soon as possible. Everybody on the phone and Ryan had already known that it was pretty serious, but to get in a walk to meet them face to face was just kind of the rubber stamp that this is pretty serious and we should get here now.
All right. Now, when you brought in the cast and crew, did they know automatically that, we need a demonologist in on this case, or did they start to realize that once they started investigating it?
I think a little both. I think they had their hunches. Chris and Joe that kind of handed the case over to Ryan, they were there as well. We talked the whole way that everybody was coming, and I think by the time Ryan and everybody got there, I think we all kind of had a pretty good idea of what course this was going to take, which is weird because usually it totally takes on a life of its own. Once we show up, we try and plan as best we can, but when we get into it, it always takes on a life of its own. But in this instance, it pretty much followed suit with what I think we're all pretty much expecting.
When you decide to take on a case of this magnitude, and was there any talk amongst the production team of, if this is legitimate and we're about to put this on the air, this is an actual exorcism we're going to be dealing with. Did you have any concerns, or did the cast and crew have any concerns of A, filming an actual possession and exorcism case, and B, airing it? Do you have any fear of that having any kind of ill effect on viewers?
Ill effect on the viewer? I mean, it's definitely, I've been lucky enough to see one cut of it a month and so ago. It's pretty powerful stuff. There's no denying it. The executive producers did a great job, and I think had a fantastic handle on it from the get-go, so they knew what, if it happened the way we were maybe expecting or thinking it might happen, they were prepared for it. Once we started rolling and everybody showed up, again, it's that show has, and I've worked with just one of the greatest production crews in television, and people showed up and got down to business and handled things very sensitively and just really, we kind of always turn into a little bit of a family when we show up at a place, and, we include the clients in that, and everybody in the crew did a great job. We deferred a lot to Ryan and to Father Calder and to Chip in terms of what we would be dealing with once this thing started, once Father Calder started doing what he ultimately did. the crew would meet outside. If anybody was uncomfortable, we would make sure that they would, were okay. And there was a paramedic on site. So we did everything we could to make sure everybody was okay and feeling comfortable and not in harm's way. We did it as best we could.
Well, we've got online with us Father Andrew Calder as well. Father Calder, you're there?
Yes, I am, Dave.
Thanks a lot for joining us. Now, Father Calder, Chris, they set this case up and they call you to come in for it. First of all, let's give the listeners that are new to the show a little background on yourself, Father Calder. Tell them a little bit about who you are and what you do and how you do what you do.
Okay, well, Dave, you know most of this. You've heard me rattle it off before, but I've been involved in the paranormal for probably the past 14 years or so, and eventually, I run into a lot of cases like this where I had trouble getting intervention or clergy help, so eventually I was led to get ordained myself. I became ordained as a Episcopal priest, and to this day I continue to work with people, working with deliverance, exorcisms, things of this nature, directly providing intervention on their behalf.
And when you were called into this case, did you have any concerns about going into a case where you knew that they would be filming this for a TV series?
Well, that's always a double-edged sword, Dave. You're kind of concerned about giving recognition to any of the entities you may be dealing with, but, it's kind of funny how these cases sometimes make their full circle. This is actually a case that I had dealt with previously in the year, because this particular paranormal group that Chris was talking about a while ago had originally contacted me to consult on this case. But for whatever reason, I never heard back from them or anything else, but now it comes back full circle for me to come in and work hands-on with them. And, I have to give Paranormal State, credit by providing me the means to be able to work with this family.
Chris, I want to wrap up with you real quickly here before we go to this first break. And I want to thank you for being a part of the show with us for this introduction as well. And I wish you much success with tomorrow night's episode. Seeing what you saw in this episode, Chris, did this affect you as somebody, who wasn't part of the paranormal field before? How did this show and filming of this episode affect you in your belief system?
It's an interesting question, Dave. I think I when I started on Paranormal back in November of last year, I kind of got thrown pretty quickly into some pretty wild stuff. And actually, the first case that I worked on was Pet Cemetery. So about 3 or 4 days into my job, I was kind of going, wow, this is something pretty wild. And I was always a believer of sorts in the paranormal and whatnot. So the whole ride that I've had with paranormal, I think I grew a little more comfortable with it. I grew a little more used to being around that sort of environment and element. I mean, this case in particular was definitely head and shoulders above and different from anything else that I've dealt with personally. But, I think a lot of my comfort came from the people that I work with, Chip, Father Calder. So all in all, it was definitely an eye-opening experience, but nothing that really impacted me terribly much. My heart goes out to the family still. I'm in contact with Laura all the time, and they're a really great group of people. So surrounded by a lot of love and whatnot was how I got through it, and it was definitely an interesting time.
Well, Chris, thanks a lot for joining us again. The episode will air tomorrow night, Monday night, October 27th, and that is on A&E, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Check local listings and times for your schedule out there. Chris, we wish you success. We're going to be back with more with Father Calder. You're listening to Darkness Radio right here on your home for Paranormal Talk Radio every Saturday and Sunday night, 9 to midnight. Good evening. Welcome back to Darkness on the Edge of Town Paranormal Radio Show. Again, let me make a quick announcement. Check out our site at darknessevents.com. We're going to have our Halloween party this Friday, and we'd love for you to come out and join us. It's free to be there. We do have a special, though. There are still 2 rooms available. If you want to come on out, you can rent the room. Special deal on that. Gives you the room for the night, also gets you in for some food, gets you some free booze tickets, and gets you a chance to ghost hunt with us at the Haunted Palmer House in Sauk Center. And there's 2 of those still available. You can check out those packages at darknessevents.com. Again, check it out at darknessevents.com. Otherwise, if you just want to come out and hang out and be there for the party, totally free. Come on out and join us. That's courtesy of our friends at ghostshop.com, where you can get all of the best paranormal ghost hunting equipment. Definitely check it out. There's some really cool stuff, and they've brought out some brand new kits you guys are going to want to see. So check that out again, darknessevents.com. Hey, guys, coming up with Christmas, we got Halloween, rather. The Ghost Hunters have their special Halloween live episode, 7-hour live episode that takes place this week. And in honor of that, for the next 5 callers we get in, we're going to give you a copy of last year's live Halloween special.
There you go.
Or no, 2 years ago, I guess.
2 years
It's the
ago.
Stanley Live,
Yep.
And that's also in honor of our Stanley trip coming up. It's a Stanley Live hotel ghost investigation with the Ghost Hunters with guest star CM Punk. You can call in right now. If you've won something from us in the last 30 days, don't bother to call because we won't be able to send it out to you. But if you haven't and you'd like to get a copy of that, you can get yourself a free copy of the Ghost Hunters Live from the Stanley Hotel. All right, we're going to go back into tonight's show. And I need to mention Mike from our web administrator has told me that Bree's news story links are up on the site. Go to darknessradio.com, click on the news desk, and those news stories she mentioned earlier with the UFO footage over a Bruce Springsteen concert is up, and then the other UFO footage site is up as well. So check that out. And those are on the Darkness Radio site. Go to darknessradio.com. And again, if you've missed any part of tonight's show, you can also download all of our archives by going to and go to the Darkness Radio podcast page. You can also sign up there so you never miss another episode. They'll always let you know when the new episodes are up and ready, and you can download them. Otherwise, just go to the site, download them, and listen to them live at your desk. We're going to go back to our guest. Father Andrew Calder is on the line. Father Andrew Calder from Kentucky. And Father Calder, you were called in on this case, and as you said, you've worked in helping people with deliverance situations, exorcisms. I don't mean to push on the subject, but I'm just curious because I know that I have a lot of the people that are naysayers that have read and seen the video footage from this upcoming episode, and the big issue people have is that they really feel, and a lot of the religious sect also believe that you should not air footage of an actual exorcism. Let's put the fact from fiction right here. Should people that watch this episode have any concern for their safety or well-being by watching a show about demonic possession?
I would say the general public doesn't have anything to worry about, but I would caution people that's easily frightened, small children, things of this nature. They don't need to be watching this because this could cause possible trauma to them. And I would say there are some people in the realm out there that you would consider sensitive or something like that, may not want to watch this episode because, there was even some people of the crew that was kind of wigged out by what happened. I didn't find this out till after the fact.
But the main thing is, is there really, you can't become possessed by watching a television show about possession, right? If people are predetermined and you're what I call a paranormal hypochondriac.
Right. Everything's a demon or a ghost.
Right. And then that happens, you can give yourself the ability to maybe draw things in, but for all intents and purposes, is there really any fear that people have to worry that they're going to be possessed?
For all intents and purposes, most people have to do something to open up a doorway in their life for these things to be able to step in. And by watching a movie or a show is not a typical doorway for something to come in.
Because they have to actually give permission for this type of thing to happen, right?
By their own free will.
Right. Not just by watching and educating this kind of thing. Is that part of why you wanted to be a part of this as well as you were educating the audience? I know a lot of... I don't even want to put it softly, Father Calder. There's just a lot of dumbasses out there that watch shows like Ghost Hunters, Paranormal State.
Don't pull punches, though.
Yeah. They watch these shows and they think the whole demon side of it is so cool, and they want to be demonologists now, and they want to get out there and expose themselves in the field for this. And did you think that this also would be a good opportunity to kind of show people what are the real dangers of opening yourself up to that side of this paranormal realm?
Well, I think the story in and of itself will let people know that, the average middle-class American Joe out there, can suffer from these type things. And this particular client now was into watching all the paranormal shows, doing EVPs and things of this nature, and this is one of the ways that the doorway got opened. Mm-hmm. So there are some dangers out there that the people in the ghost hunting realm and everything else needs to know about this stuff.
And let me apologize. I misspoke when I said you're from Kentucky. You're actually from Georgia area.
That's correct.
I know that you were working with the Kentucky group, and that's
right.
My mind got trapped up in that for a few seconds. So I apologize for misspeaking on that. Right. So again, and I want to make that a mention. A lot of people come to me especially this time of year, and I know you're getting it too. They want to know, how do you get into ghost hunting, this, that, and the other, and should we start practicing at home with ghost hunting and EVP work and everything? You know what? No, I'm a firm believer. Don't be a fool. Don't open up the doors and invite things in. If you start giving them attention and start paying them attention, that's when you start getting stuff you can't handle.
Right.
So, I would not recommend doing EVP work at home. I know that we have Mark and Debbie Constantino who are EVP specialists, and they do it a lot at home, and they don't claim to ever have anything of a malevolent nature happen to them. And I guess it doesn't, it depends on your intent. But for people that don't really know what they're doing and just kind of opening doors, that can open up to a really ugly thing.
Well, a lot of people don't have a firm grounding or faith foundation, whether it be worshiping a 5-pound crystal or whether it be, worshiping God or what it may be. They don't have that background or faith to protect them before they get involved in these type things. So that's where a lot of problems come in at, is that they don't have the things necessary to protect them from doing this type stuff.
Right. And we're going to come back after our next break, and we're going to bring psychic medium Chip Coffey on the line with us, and we're going to talk to him about his involvement in the episode as well, because I'm interested in it from a psychic standpoint, what their thoughts and what his belief is on this and how it affected him. And we're going to be interspersing. Father Calder will be staying on through this show or through this hour, and then he'll be with us again for the third hour of tonight's show. And we'll open up phone lines to take your calls in the third hour as well. And I will tell you, too, tonight we're going to be sharing, we've got some actual audio from the original case, the Emily Rose case. And again, give a little background on that, Father Calder, so when we play it later, people know a little bit more about it.
You talking about give background now?
Yeah, if you don't mind, just a quick intro, so that way when we play it later, people will know what we're talking about.
Basically this was a case that happened back in the early 70s with a young lady, I forget, was it over in Germany?
Yes, I believe so.
Over in Germany that, seemed to be a very devout Christian. The whole family was very devout in their faith and practices, that became demonically possessed and went through several exorcisms, and eventually they say that she died from the exorcisms, and I believe the parents and the priest served some time in jail for that. But it was a very horrific case.
Right.
She suffered a lot of physical torment.
And her real name was Anna Elise Michelle or something like that?
Right, that's correct.
And we have some actual, I think, about a minute and a half worth of audio
of the exorcism, right?
Yeah, we didn't play the whole thing. As Father Calder had said, if you're going to play some of the audio, just play a quick segment. Don't involve it too much. And so we did that. We've just got a small bit of audio we'll play later. But we also have some really interesting audio that was sent to me by a listener that is called Hell Sounds. And it's an interesting story. We'll cover that later. I'd like your input on that, Father Calder. Okay. But we're going to take our break. We're going to come back with Chip Coffey and talk a little bit more about tomorrow night's episode. And again, if you're not familiar with this, tomorrow night on A&E, they have a special 1-hour episode of Paranormal State that's going to air tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Central Time. Check your local listings and times for times in your area. And Father Calder, Chip Coffey, and the cast of Paranormal State were involved in a live an exorcism that they actually videotaped and caught on film that they'll be sharing on tomorrow night's episode. So we'll be back with more. You're listening to Darkness Radio right here on your home of Paranormal Talk Radio every Saturday and Sunday night, 9 to midnight. Welcome back to the show. You're listening to Darkness Radio. I'm your host, Dave Schrader. Co-host Tim Dennis sitting across the board from us with intern Ben. And, of course, Captain Candy Pants Andy is in there with her as well, answering phones. How's that? Is that a good title, Captain Candy Pants? You like that? All right, he gave me the thumbs up.
Did he?
He did. We've got an official name for him.
Cool.
And we do still, they're letting me know we still have 2 copies left of the Ghost Hunters Live from the Stanley episode on DVD. So if you'd like to win that, you can give us a call at our toll-free number, for those of you out of state, our 800-270-5560. Again, that's 800-270-5560. Otherwise, you can call us locally. We're going to go back to our phones and our guests this evening. Father Andrew Calder also joining us from his home in Atlanta, Georgia area. We're going to go to Mr. Chip Coffey. Good evening, Chip. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Dave. Hey, Tim. Good to be here with you.
Now, I know you've been out traveling, so we're just going to keep you for a little bit here. I know you're getting worn down, so all you folks out there listening, send your love and energy to Mr. Chip Coffey here to keep him through the show for us, at least, so we can keep him energized. Chip, I want to talk to you real quickly. When you went into a case like this, now you've been involved in the paranormal, and you're a psychic medium. You help people communicate with the other side often. When you were called in on a case like this and you got in there, is there a palpable change? I mean, can you feel something over and above just a regular haunting when you walk into a case where there's some type of possession involved?
I do. It actually feels negative and ugly and nasty, and it's one of those things where I immediately know that I've got to layer on even more protective elements around myself than normal.
Well, Chip, do you actually, when you see these people that have possession going on or problems like this, do you see a change in them? I mean, can you see, like, I guess what I'm looking at is in the movies, horror movies, just to give somebody a visual, you kind of see that overhang, that haze around them of like something else sticking to them. Is that what you see when you see these people, or do you just get the sense of dread or fear, or what pulls off of you to let you know that there's something there?
The way that I would have to describe it is there's some sense of knowing that there's something really amiss. It's the idea that there's something really, really wrong with the situation, and that. Well, let me give you an example with the case that we dealt with in Quincy, Illinois. There's the girl that was suffering possession, and there were times when she seemed really herself and normal, and it was an intermittent sort of possession. And there were times when she seemed to be very fine, but you could almost see her slipping back into that state of possession. And it was something that was the most frightening thing I think I've ever seen in my life.
Now, Father Calder, we have you on the line as well. I don't know. Do you have a sensitivity as well? I know. I mean, I guess I don't know if you're psychic in what you do, but when you walk into a case like this, is there something that you can feel that allows you to know that this is more than just a mental condition or just a standard ghost?
Well, to mention in this particular case, we did have the services available of a therapist that had worked with the girl, so we knew that she wasn't suffering from psychosis or anything of this nature. But in many of the cases I work with in dealing with the demonic, the malevolent, things like this, I do have a sense, I call it my spidey sense, I can't describe it any other way, and letting me know that there is a malevolent presence around. It's just something, as Chip said, it's just...
Is that what they call discernment?
Yeah, that's what they speak of in the Bible is discernment. That's the capability of discerning, evil spirits. That's not the same thing as psychic ability. Everybody has some psychic ability to some degree, but not everybody has discernment levels. Which
is obvious, or I wouldn't have been divorced twice. Now, Chip, I'm curious, too, with what you do in this part of the field. When you get in, you mentioned that you know that you have to amp up and protect yourself. And we'll cover with Father Calder in a minute the religious, theological aspect of protecting yourself. But as a psychic, what do you do to protect yourself from getting something attached to you? I guess you've got more of an energy flow. You've got to kind of be like just a plump apple to these demons. They'd want to feed off of you, I would guess. How do you protect yourself from getting this kind of attack?
Before I go in, if I know that there's something really bad going on, and I have agreements with the people that I work with, excuse me, if they possibly think that there's anything demonic going on in a location, they'll let me know that I need to layer on protections. Now, usually I go in very, very cold in cases on Paranormal State, but I will tell you on this one, Ryan did tell me that, Chip, you really just need to layer on the protections really, really thick when you go into this place. And I did so. Andy will tell you also, before we did the first case together for Devil in Syracuse, I walked up to the door and said, I'm not going in there. And he and I went back across to the Winnebago that they had rented, crossed through the snow, and went back to the Winnebago and spent time in prayer before we went back in. Ryan and I did the same thing in Quincy. We went to Mass, we went to communion, we went to confession. We put ourselves in what we thought was a state of grace. Other than that, as a psychic, and this is something that I've gotten from a number of clergy that I've worked with, and including Reverend Calder that's on the phone, Father Calder on the phone with us. I shut myself down. I do what I call snapshots. I take little almost like flashes of discernment, flashes of sensitive information that is coming through. So I don't leave myself completely wide open psychically. I really manage my ability better so that I minimize the jeopardy to myself, I believe.
All right. Now, Father Calder, from a theological standpoint, how can people protect themselves? There's a lot of people out there investigating and being involved in the paranormal. How do you protect yourself going into an investigation, whether it be one that's demonic or just ghost in nature? How do you protect yourself, and what do you recommend people do?
Well, you have to understand, what I do and what other people do is going to be probably totally different, because I was pretty much sure before I went into this case what was going to be needed on this particular one, because Ryan, called me up like the Monday before and told me, what was going on and what they thought it might be. So, I kind of followed my gut hunches. What I typically do is that I will try to absolve myself of all sin if possible, heavy prayer time. I also fasted for 3 days before this particular exorcism, something just
now that's something that has always intrigued me. I hear a lot of these exorcists, they fast. Doesn't that weaken you instead of strengthening you? I would guess loading up with carbs and getting ready to get in there and kick a little demon ass would be a better way to handle it than starving yourself and being at the point of delusions.
Well, it's more of a sacrifice. It's something you giving up of yourself that is very important to you, to your body and so forth like that, to get ready for the battle, so to speak. Even in the Bible, it speaks of only some can be cast out through much prayer and fasting. So following biblical principles, I follow that. Whether it works or not, I have no idea for other people, but I know it has worked for me with extremely bad cases.
Well, I would guess, too, to keep you from throwing up when the demon starts throwing up at you, right? Keeps you fresh?
Or when they punch you in the gut or something, yeah.
Oh, geez, that's not good. So, but you recommend for people that are getting involved, if they don't have your level of fasting and doing that stuff, prayer is prayer a good idea before an investigation
and after?
Okay, but can prayer also, and maybe Chip, you can chime in on this as well, because I know you come at it from a religious standpoint. Can you overprotect yourself going into an investigation where nothing will happen around you because you've got your angels, your archangels, your white light, your medallions, your lucky rabbit's foot and four-leaf clover? I mean, are you going to protect yourself out of having some kind of activity happen around you?
I don't know. I've never experienced that. I don't think there's, personally, I don't know that there is such a thing as overprotection, and maybe that's me just erring on the side of caution. I'm not afraid when I go in on these cases, but one of the things that I think Andy will tell you is constantly, especially because he and I have worked together on a number of cases that have negative activity involved with them, we serve as each other's wingmen. We're constantly monitoring each other for psychological or physiological changes in personality or the way that we present ourselves. I'm constantly asking him and others around me, are you all right? Are you doing okay? And he does the same thing for me. On one case, he noticed some personality changes happening with me and actually yanked me out of the house to make sure that I was away from the situation and was doing okay. In the early days of me having to deal with any of this stuff, I was totally a novice at this, and he recognized that. And he's provided me with a lot of insight and training on things that need to happen on cases that involve demonic things. But overly protected, I don't know that there really is such a thing, and I wouldn't imagine that it's going to prevent. It's a personal thing that you do for your own personal protection, rather than, I think, a whole layer of protection around the situation. I see it as a personal thing. What do you think, Andy?
I tend to agree, Chip. I don't think you can overprotect. These forces are going to take advantage of any weakness that they can. And if you got any benign forces, human spirits and stuff like that, I don't think you're going to block out anything that's really wanting just to communicate with you. So I don't think that's really anything ghost hunters should really be afraid of, but I think the biggest thing they should be afraid of is not taking this seriously and doing their due diligence as far as doing any type of protection. Because when you go into a location,
right,
what you're going to run into.
Now, we have Kristen on the line real quick before we go to break, and Kristen has a question for Chip Coffey. Go ahead, Kristen.
Hi, Chip. This is Kristen. My question is, when you go into a situation like that, how much do you draw on your Native American experience? Is that very important, or does that come into play?
Interestingly enough, I would say I'm going to confess, I don't know enough to draw enough on that. I haven't delved that much into that background of the Native American part of myself. I know, of course, about smudging rituals and certain things about Native American rituals that are done with regard to protective elements. But Pretty much, I abide by most of the Catholic stuff and by the religious elements, more so, I would say, than my Native American elements, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Kristen, why don't you hold on? Thanks for giving us a call. We're going to put you on hold, and I'll get you a copy of The Strangers on DVD, okay?
Okay.
All right. Thank you for being a part of the show.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then we're going to take a quick break here. We'll be back more with Chip Coffey and Father Andrew Calder. You're listening to Darkness Radio. Welcome back to Darkness on the Edge of Town Paranormal Radio Show. I'm your host, Dave Schrader. Sitting across the board for me, Mr. Tim Dennis. Our guest this evening is Father Andrew Calder, and on the line with us also, psychic medium Chip Coffey from the television show Paranormal State. We're talking about tomorrow night's special 1-hour episode that will be airing on A&E at 9 p.m. Central Time. Check your local listings for A&E times and schedule so that you don't miss it. Make sure to T-vote. This is going to be an episode that will be talked about. I got a chance to see a few scenes of this at UNIVCon this year, and it looks absolutely amazing. Definitely something I think people will have an interest in checking out. And hopefully, they check it out for the horror movie aspect of it, and they walk away learning a little something, because that's what I got from just even watching the bits and pieces that they were able to screen for us at UNIVCon. Chip, I'm curious, and Father Calder, maybe you can help us out with this. Now, Chip, you were mentioning that Father Calder has kind of taken you under his wing and helped you understand some of these things a little bit more on the episodes that you filmed together, and you've worked well together. Father Calder, how... And I like to ask this question, especially at live events. I know I always throw Chip under the bus about it, but how does religious aspects that you're involved in, how do you overcome with the fact that, as a psychic medium, it's usually not what religion considers a good path? I know Chip Coffey personally, love the guy to death, probably one of the nicest guys I know, and he's got a great faith base in religion. But that seems so... diametrically opposed to what we're told and brought up believing is that psychics and mediums are bad and we shouldn't seek their counsel or advice. When you're working alongside psychics and mediums in the field and in the paranormal field, do you think that then again that there is a definite plus side to having this, or again, is it like anything? You can have a good politician, a bad politician, a good psychic, a bad psychic, a good McDonald's chef, a bad Burger King chef. Is it that kind of thing?
I don't know about the correlation of a Burger King chef, man. But,
I just wanted to try to use the word chef with Burger King and McDonald's.
Well, I do tend to agree with that. They can be good or bad in anything. But, one advantage I have is my experience of working in the paranormal before I became clergy. I got to experience, hauntings, human ghosts, poltergeist, these type things. So I know they exist. And I know a lot of these families and so forth are not devil worshipers. They're not black magic, although that we do run into some of that now. But, I know that all these people are not bad. I've worked with some very, very good, kind-hearted people in the psychic realm. So I can't say, that everybody out there is, going to hell or that they're worshiping the devil just because they have psychic abilities. How we can ever change that with the clergy out there is probably going to be pretty difficult. I feel very fortunate that I have my experience to back up my academic knowledge.
Now, have you ever come across, and I'd like to know this from Chip's side too, have you come across, Chip, other psychic mediums in the profession who have ended up getting attachments from a darker side because they didn't know what they were doing and that they weren't protecting themselves?
Absolutely.
And is that something that happens more often than not, or and again, I don't mean to throw any of these psychics or mediums under the bus, but I know quite a few psychics and mediums out in the field, and their lives seem in upheaval, and they really seem to be kind of in bad places and in bad straits a lot of times. Do you believe that has something to do with it because they're not protecting themselves and they're opening themselves up for negativity?
I believe that can be a part of it. I also believe that when you get involved in this kind of work, in the paranormal arena, as we well know, there's a lot of drama. And I believe that people tend to get themselves immersed in that drama and get themselves immersed in things that they can't handle and can't understand, rather than kind of backing away from things that they don't understand or they don't feel they have the experience from, and trying to keep their life as drama-free as possible. So do I think there's possibly something paranormal going on? Perhaps, and sometimes definitely. But I also think that the real-world aspects, for me as a psychic and a medium, I try to keep as much clutter out of my personal life as I possibly can and not have all the nonsense and the crap going on in my personal life so that I can be, free to not have those blocks come up for my own opinions and bring my own stuff into my readings. And if I've got my own stuff going on, if you're depressed or you've got a lot of things going on, particularly if you're dealing with anything demonic, you better stay the hell away from it, because you're fertile ground to have something attach onto you. As we all well know, those guys that are the bad guys out there just love discord and disharmony and dysfunction. And if you've already got that going on in your personal life, your best defense is to stay away from it.
All right. And Father Calder, how about you now? Have you met people in the field of psychics and mediums who you think are dabbling more with the dark side and that you can see attachments with them? And do they, maybe even if I shouldn't say dabbling, if they've had that, are they more predisposed to have more issues with demonic and negative entities against once they've opened themselves up for that in the past?
Oh, most definitely. You'll find people in the realm that, as Chip said, they don't really have a grasp on what they're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
The different exercises, energies that they're allowing to make contact with, and even in some cases they're allowing it to come into themselves and so forth like that. And as Chip said before, these are what I like to term opportunistic predators. They're sitting around looking, saying like, hey, this person over here is, doing all this psychic stuff, trying to develop their abilities. They want to be the next Cleo, Miss Cleo, or whatever it may be, because they want to be the one that's able to tell people secret information.
Right.
They want to be able to say like, oh yeah, I feel the spirit of a little boy, things of this nature, which I have nothing against that. But so many people are just so much in to the paranormal now in the psychic realm that they open themselves up by wanting to do these things, and they don't see the dangers that's blatantly right before their face.
And there are a lot of dangers.
Yes.
I often say, Dave, I will often tell people that when you go on a paranormal investigation, it's like wading into a dark swamp where you don't know what's going to come up and bite you. And that's a pretty good analogy. I mean, it sounds a little dramatic, but it's a pretty good analogy. You don't know what you're going to get yourself involved in.
If I can interject on that as well, and a lot of these people that have latent psychic abilities and so forth, nothing against you, Chip, but, these folks that have latent abilities just kind of beginning to bud and so forth, they want to take everything that they perceive through their intuition and sensitivities as cold, hard fact. I'm seeing so many of the investigators these days. They're not really paranormal investigators. They're more in the psychic investigator realm. They go in using their psychic sensitivities, picking up stuff, and that's pretty much all they give to the client.
Right.
They see a little boy. They say, oh, it's a little boy. Well, these things know how to play on our frailties and our humanities as well, because they know that we're very...
And I want to talk about that when we come back from the top of the hour as well, Father Calder, because that's something that's always bothered me. Chip, we're going to let you get going here. People, if they want to get readings with you, they can reach out to you at chipcoffey.com. Is that correct?
That is correct.
ChipCoffey.com, chipcoffey.com.
That is it.
Chip, you have an event coming up in Roswell. We got about 20 seconds here. What can you tell people how they can find out information on that?
Go to pressheremedia.com, and you can get all the information there, or to my website, there's a link.
Great, and that's going to be out in Roswell, not New Mexico, but Roswell, Georgia. Our friends Diana and Joe Avena, I think Michael and Marty Perry are going to be a part of it. You're there, quite a few other people as well, correct?
We're going to have a great event.
Good deal. Well, thank you very much, Chip, and we'll look forward to talking to you again soon, sir. Again, tomorrow night's episode of Paranormal State on A&E airs at 9 p.m. Central. Check it out. Chip Coffey, Father Andrew Calder, and the cast of Paranormal State deal with a real exorcism. We're going to be back after the top of the hour, more with Father Andrew Calder talking about possession, exorcism. We're going to be playing some really strange audio, so stick with us. You're listening to the best in Paranormal Talk Radio right here on your home for Paranormal Talk Radio every Saturday and Sunday night, 9 to midnight.